Hello, what we're going to take a look at today is the AutoCAD interface for the 2012 release. And what I'd like to start off with is mentioning the ribbon. And the similarity between all Autodesk software is this ribbon. What you're seeing a lot these days is this sort of interface come into play, and it helps learn each piece of software together, so that when you go into AutoCAD or if you go into Revit or Inventor, you have a similar navigation process that involves this ribbon, the view cube, and the workspace. So starting off, we'll go back up to the top to the application menu, which you see is the A for AutoCAD, and you have your different file functions like new, open, save, print, and you also have the application options as well. So we'll open that up quickly and talk a little bit about changing the application settings. So as the options window comes open, you can see you have different tabs along the top with different settings. In profiles, this is where you would develop a custom user interface by starting with a different workspace and then making it specific to what you have to do. Then you name the profile and you move along with your work. You also have different tabs here for selection process within the drawing space, 3D modeling settings, drafting, user preferences, and display for your color scheme, which you can change from light to dark. So essentially, if there's something that's application wide that you would like to change or modify, this is where you come to make those changes. So we'll just hit OK, exit out. So now above the ribbon, you see you have different tabs. Because we're in the 3D modeling workspace, these tabs are set to a certain setting, certain parameters. We change this to drafting and annotation, you'll see the ribbon change for specific drafting and annotation workflow. So you have the common tools, and if you change this again to say 3D basics, you'll notice a different ribbon loads up as well. So the ribbon itself consists of the file tabs, and then you have your panels. So in the panels, you see there are drop-down menus which house more of the tools, and you can navigate to those other tools simply by clicking on that drop-down menu. So next is the model space, which is accompanied by layout space as well. So in the model space, you have different view options. You can change your visual style from conceptual to hidden to realistic, shaded. You can also change the orientation of the view. You can change the projection. And you can also change the settings in which you have a navigation bar, steering wheels, and a view cube. So if I shut this off, you see the view cube disappear. But we'll turn that back on and explore the view cube just a little bit. So over here is the view cube, which has allowed us to make navigation in 3D that much more easy. By grabbing these toggles, you can manipulate the model space and get to various views, whether they be orthographic or isometric. So if we go back to the top, you'll notice that north is no longer in the orientation that we want it to. So we can simply grab the arrow and rotate the view cube back into the position that we like. So this is where you will do your drawings, and this is how you navigate around it. You also have these navigation tools here on the side. These are navigation wheel, your pan command, different zoom options. You have zoom extents, you have your 3D orbit, and slow motion once you get into animations and camera views. So we'll switch over to our layout space, which can also be activated down here. So right now, notice how it says paper. If we switch back to model, you'll know that you're in model space because this changes back as well. Different settings for our sheet can be accessed by right-clicking on the tab and hitting the page setup manager. You can choose to modify the sheet setup by clicking on the plotter name and choosing a different plotter. You can choose different paper sizes as well. You can choose plot styles, which essentially defines how thick the lines come out in the plot. You have plot offsets and plot areas, so you can choose the layout itself, the display, or window. Maybe you just want to plot from the model space, so you just choose a window and target a certain area. You can also change your plot scales here as well. So we'll exit out of here and take a look at the model space, or sorry, the layout space. Here is an illustration of how your sheet will look. So you can take up more real estate of the page's current setup by changing the viewport, or you can create multiple viewports and access different aspects of your drawing set in one sheet. Down here on the bottom are different drafting settings. So you can infer constraints, you can change to snap mode, you can turn the grid on or off, you can put on orthographic mode or polar tracking, which allows you to snap to certain angles a little bit easier. And then you have object snaps for both 3D and 2D. So if we right click on the object snap settings, you can see the different object snaps that you can make available to make manipulating the geometry that much easier. You also have object snap tracking and dynamic UCS. You have dynamic input, show and hide line weights, show and hide transparency for images. You can access quick properties by hitting this command here. And you also have selection cycling, which you may have multiple objects layered over one another, and this allows you to cycle through them. So we'll draw a little bit of geometry here just to show some of these different settings. As you can see right now, I have a 1-inch line, and it's highlighted. If I wanted to toggle the dynamic input for the angle, I can toggle over, and you can see it's at 21. Well, I can enter into the keyboard 34, press enter, and it'll create that 1-inch line at that angle exactly. So same thing moving forward. I have the length toggle on. I could switch that to 2-inch line at 90 degrees. So it'll toggle back over to the angle. And notice now it creates my 2-inch line at exactly 90 degrees. So with polar tracking enabled, I can infer certain angles. So right now it's at a 30-degree increment. I can change that to 45. So the next line I draw, I will get a snap at every 45-degree angle. And you can see the tracking by the green dotted line. Object snaps are very helpful. You can see that it grabbed the endpoint of that line. It'll snap to a midpoint or a tangent, parallels, and again, I'll just quickly open up those different settings to show you what you can access to help you along with your drafting. So you have perpendicular, quadrant, node, different points on your geometry that you'll be touching lots. Over here you also have some other settings for annotations. You have an annotation scale, turning an annotation on and off. This will add the scale to specific sheet sizes. You can change your workspace settings over here as well. The lock will actually make all your positions of toolbars and palettes permanent, so you can't accidentally wipe out a toolbar by clicking on it accidentally. You can also turn hardware acceleration on or off, which is a handy feature if you're doing 3D modeling and your geometry is getting quite intensive and slowing your machine down. You can also isolate objects with this light bulb button, and that's helpful if you're in a small area using lots of objects and trying to manipulate them. You also have the option of splitting to a clean screen, which gives you more real estate and you can see more of your model or your drawing. Along the bottom, we'll just switch back to the normal view, and along the bottom you have your coordinates. So if you change any of your geometry, these coordinates, if I was to draw a new line, you'll see where that coordinate is. So right now we're at the 2 inch in the X and 0 for Y and Z. So when I draw my line, it's telling me, you can see the 4 and the 0, it's shifting along to show me where I'm putting my geometry. Again, now if I reference the properties of this line, it'll show me the starting X, the starting Y, the starting Z, and then the end of all those coordinates as well. So you see 2, 2, and 0, and 2, 0, and 0. And my length is actually 2 inches on a 71-degree angle. So using dynamic input, you can go back to that and change it by simply clicking on a grip and toggling back and forth from your length to your angle. So we'll keep this at 45. And notice that my start point is still where it was, but it's changed my end point because of the angle that I applied to it. So that's essentially a brief introduction to the AutoCAD interface.